Hello, hello, and welcome. Bienvenidos. Welcome to our Chile's Old Vine Revolution webinar. My name is Lizzie Butler, and I'm the Director of Wine for Importer Vine Connections. And I'm so thrilled today to have an incredible panel in front of me, calling in all the way from across the world from Chile. We have Felipe Garcia, who is the head winemaker and partner of PAIS Garcia Wines, as well as the founder of both Movi and Vino, which we will talk about today. And we have Julio Bouchon, who is the executive director of J. Bouchon and Bouchon Family Wines, and also the current president of Vino. So a lot of different overlaps tonight. And I would say, you know, the old vine story in Chile is so layered, and to be able to have two people with us tonight that have been boots on the ground really pushing this movement forward, it's such a great opportunity. So I'm thrilled you're all joining us. The third panelist is Christian Sepulveda. He is the head winemaker for J. Bouchon. The very exciting news is that he just had twins. So he is currently at the hospital with his wife and his kiddos, and they're just leaving the hospital today, so he might join us later. But big cheers for Christian and his family. Everyone's doing well. So just to give you a little bit of a roadmap for today's chat, we are going to start talking about just the 101 of the history of the old vine story in Chile. Then we're going to go through what the evolution of this culture has been throughout the modernization of Chilean wine. And then really talk about today, you know, where these vines have re-entered the story of Chilean wine in the modern chapter in the last really 20 years. And again, I would say that it's a really unique opportunity to talk to two wineries within this project because there's a very specific group of producers that have really been pushing this forward. So great to have Felipe and Julio here to be able to chat. So then, of course, with the webinar, we have the chat box open. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to either comment in the chat, or there's actually a Q&A section to do that as well. And at the end, we're going to have a Q&A section, so we can save a lot of discussion for that as well. So I hope everyone, wherever you are, has a glass of wine with you. So cheers to all of you. Sante, salud. And Julio, we're going to start with you. So when we talk about the old vine revolution in Chile, we're talking about, you know, a country that, you know, there's a term in the wine world where you have old world and new world. And old world usually associates with Europe and new world with the Americas. But I think many people don't realize is that Chile has been making wine since the 1500s. And that's really where this old vine story starts. So if you could take us back to that 16th century arrival of the first grapevines to the Americas, take us there, and then take us how that arrived to Chile and how that created the foundation of the wine culture in Chile.
Well, thank you, Lizzie. A pleasure to be here. Thanks to everybody for joining tonight. Well, it's true. It's a long story in the Chilean viticulture. Everybody thinks that everything started in 1850, 1800s, but the real story started 300 years before with the conquerors. Everything started in La Mancha. The conquerors, they took their boats and they navigate into the Canary Islands. This was the last stop before crossing to America. So in the Canary Islands, they will load the boats with food, with water, and everything they need for the trip. But they also will load some seeds of grapes, of vines, because they need these vineyards for the religious purposes. So this is the main reason why they load the seeds of vines, no, to start. So they will cross to America. They arrive in Mexico. They move up to California. They go down to Chile, to Argentina and Chile. So the PAIS is called in Chile. The variety is called Listan Prieto, the original one in Spain, and Mission in California and Mexico, Criolla Chica in Chile. So this is the beginning of the story. Sorry?
Criolla Chica in Argentina.
Criolla Chica in Argentina, yes. And so this is the beginning of the story. as I said before, for religious purposes at the beginning, nothing else. But then is the way the farmers, they start planting for the consumption for work. This is food. This is not like alcohol for party. This is food. So the workers in the farm, they will go with bread and wine to work. This is the history of our wine, our PAIS. It's simple as food, very easy, no? Everybody. So in the timeline, there is two important moments in the history. The first one in 1500 is all about the conquerors and the religious purposes and the arrival of this PAIS variety to Chile. So that is the first step of the Chilean history of viticulture, no? And then consumption of wine and everything what is related to. And the second part is 300 years later, when the French arrive from Bordeaux, French they came to Chile to work together with the wealthy people from the mining, and they established around Santiago in Maipo area, the famous area for the Cabernet Sauvignon. So more the chateau concept, building these beautiful houses, the beautiful parks with a proper vineyard, with a proper cellar. So the more, let's say, modern way, more industrial way of viticulture. At the same time, they discovered that in the south of Chile, we had these patrimonial PAIS varieties, but this PAIS has no future for them because PAIS is light in body, is light in color, is not a fine wine for the Bordeaux concept, no? So after it's in 1850, more or less, they will go down south in Maule, Itata, and Biobío. This is the Secano Interior area in the south, and they will bring varieties to improve the quality of this PAIS, or they think that they will improve the quality, and they brought Carignan in reds, Carignan, Sanso. They are planted in different areas of the Secano Interior, from north to south, from Maule to Itata and Biobío. In whites, Moscatel and Semillon. So that's why in the south of Chile, we have these old patrimonial old vines. So that is the second part of the timeline of the story of the old vines. So in terms of age of the vines, you have to know, of course, you know that we don't have phylloxera in Chile. So we have a lot of vines that are pre-phylloxera. In PAIS, there is no records because the new statistics in Chile, the numbers of plantations started in the 90s. So before, the titles of the farms will tell you that in this farm are planted 5 or 10 or 20 hectares of red wine. This is what we have. This is the record. So it's very difficult to identify the age, but normally we say 100 plus or 200 plus, but maybe they are older. Huh? So we are very lucky. In terms of the second part, in terms of the Carignans and the Sanso, they are between 60 and 80 years old. That is what we find regularly in the area. So we are very lucky because we have some good amount of hectares of these vines. We have been involved working together in countries like South Africa. There is a group of producers working together with the Old Vine Project, and they say 30 years old. To be part of the Old Vine certification is 30 years old. In Chile, for us, 30 years old, we don't consider Old Vine. When we talk about Old Vine, is 60 or more. So it's incredible because for many years after this Bordeaux philosophy or Bordeaux paradigm, everybody was focused into the Cabernet, Merlot, Carmener, blah, 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 and also the typical pyramid, the entry-level Cabernet Merlot, Reserva Cabernet Merlot, Gran Reserva the same, and the high-end blend, you know? So this heritage was lost, and everybody will use it for the bulk. So it's completely gone for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept is the revival of this treasure. This is the old vine in Chile.
Yeah, it's an amazing overview, and I think the two main chapters that are important for people to remember is that first arrival, that 1600s arrival, the foundation of wine culture there, based in the south, mainly the valleys of Maule, Itata, Biobío. And then the arrival of some other varietals after PAIS, the first varietal being PAIS, and then the other varietals arriving. And then that shift to very, very focused Bordeaux. And I think that second chapter is very much what people know of Chile today. More strictly Bordeaux varietals, mainly more central valleys around the areas of Santiago. But what has really changed and what the revolution that we're talking about tonight is really the past 20 years. And just to give some context to Vine Connection's work with Chile, we represent a portfolio of Chilean wine that was launched here in the US in 2013. And it is all based on appellation of the map of Chile, which you guys can see on your screen here. And the reason is that there was no other portfolio of Chilean wine in the US that people could taste through and actually taste the full map of Chile. That included all the way from the Atacama Desert in the north down to these southern valleys that have this old vine spirit and agriculture and story, and especially the wines. But these wines weren't really accessible in an export market until the more recent chapters. And Felipe, I would love to hear from you because you were one of the first people to start recognizing these old vine vineyards in the 2000s. And you were especially inspired by Carignan. And that was really the base of the movement Vino that you started. So if you could take us back to the years and the time frame that you really started recognizing these old vines, and tell us what inspired you to really start making wines and start these movements in Chile.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. Yeah, in Chile, we have record that the first Carignan, I will come back.
Yeah, please.
But yeah, it's because a big earthquake here in Chile in 1950 that all the viticulture area was totally destroyed. And for that reason, the government sent some people to reach out for some variety to improve the PAIS. And for that reason, they start to choose some of these varieties, and one of these varieties was Carignan, because Carignan is with a big production, is really with a dark color, and is with a high acidity. And for that reason, in 1950, start to arrive the first Carignan and start to be planted in the Maule and South. But there was a little problem with the Carignan that PAIS is a very rustic variety, only with 1 or 2 sulfur application will be fine for all the season, and it's very easy to produce. But Carignan is they need 10 or 12 or 14 or maybe 14 sulfur application during the maduration to prevent the botrytis and the powdery mildew. For that reason, the people, the huasos, the people that work with the Carignan start to call this variety la llamadora de polvo. It's the variety that called the polvo. The polvo is the dust, and the dust is the powdery mildew. And for that reason, if it's only 1,000 hectares of Carignan planted in Chile. And the variety was forget it, and start to be blended with PAIS, and the wine was into the bulk wine until 1997 that the Gilmore was the first winery to bottle Carignan with the name in the label. And it's funny because Francisco Gilmore needed to do an application for the government for an authorization to named the wine Carignan because Carignan wasn't in the novel varieties of Chile, same as Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, or the other novel varieties. And that was the first Carignan wine bottle. And the next year was the Martino and Morandé. But is the Carignan story in a bottle is very short. But since the finish of the 90s, nobody take care about Carignan because same as PAIS, wasn't varieties very cool or was supposed to do as a Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot. And for that reason, the variety was totally asleep. And in the beginning of the 2000 and in 2010, a group of Carignan lovers, is that the name that I use, because are all winemakers that start to produce Carignan. We get together because Andres Sanchez from Gilmore Winery and Eduardo Bretauer is a wine writer. They start to talk about this wine, the Carignan. Why the Carignan is so special, the acidity, the tannins, the freshness. And finally, we start to get together with the other winemakers that they produce Carignan. And we realized that all the area that we love Carignan was the same area. That is the dry farmed area from Maule Valley. We realized that all the vines are older than 40 years. All the vineyards are dry farmed, bush vines with no training system. And finally, we discovered that was an area in Chile, that is the dry farming area from Maule Valley, with one variety and with a culture moving into the wine that we realized that was really special. And for that reason, we start to try the wines and we say, come on, here we have something very special, very specific. And we get together under the Bouchon name in 2010. It's from 1950 to 2010, and more than 60 years that the variety was totally asleep and wake up in the 2010 with 12 wineries producing Carignan from Maule with the same label. Today you can find, today we are 17 or 16? 17.
16.
16. We are 16 wineries producing
16, sorry.
Vino with the Vino label.
I'll show what everyone sees in the US. That's a Chile design. This is what you'll see, the Vino here. It's a little bright.
And that is a great revolution. And here we get together small wineries as P.S. Garcia and big wineries as Conchitoro, Undurraga, De Martino. Mm-hmm. And finally, we are together because we really love the variety and we really know that when you drink a bottle of Vino, you are drinking a piece of land, a piece of culture from Chile. That is great, and I think Vino is one of the few varieties or few wines that can show so clear a piece of land in our country. That is, for me, is the best.
I think it's a really important story. I think that one of the storylines that has really caught people's attention from Chile, is the old vine story, and as a subset to that is Vino specifically. So many people asked, as they're studying Chile especially, what is Vino? And so Felipe did a great job explaining that seeing Vino on a label of wine denotes a certain place. So it's very much more from an older world perspective of it's denoting place, and there's a list of regulations that the winemaker needs to follow to make a bottle of Vino. And so when you see a wine with a vino label, you know that that wine follows all of those regulations as well as the same source area. So Felipe, could you take us through the exact list of regulations that a winemaker needs to follow to make a vino?
Yeah, the vine must be from the dry farmed area of Maule Valley.
Yep.
Secano interior.
El secano interior. The age must be older than 35 years old. Must be dry farmed, no irrigation in the vineyard. Bush vines. And after that, the wine can be 85% of Carignan, and the other 15% must be in the same way. If you have another variety as Grenache or PAIS or any other, must be into the Maule Valley, all vines, no irrigation, bush vine. Must be in the same way. And finally, the wine must be aged for 2 years. We really believe that the tannin of the Carignan, the acidity is very special, and the wine will show better after 2 years. That is at least 2 years.
And also very important, we need to use the same label. So Vino must be bigger than the producer. So it's a kind of a DOC, not legal, officially legal, but it's a kind of DOC. Like when people in Europe use Châteauneuf de Pape, the producer is small down there, but the most important is Vino than the producer. And this is a unique experience. I was not part, Bouchon is new in Vino from 2015, but putting together all this group at the beginning, 10 years ago, using the same label, the same bigger than the Vino, bigger than the brand, the family brand, is something that is not easy for this country.
No, that's, in that moment, yeah. I think in those years was a couple of revolutions. The other one was Mobi. I will talk a little bit about this. Mobi is the movement of independent vintners. And in those days, we found the group with 12 wineries. And 4 of these 12 wineries produce Carignan. And finally, when we get together with the big ones, the small one, teach how to share with the big ones. And for that reason, we keep some rules, and my vote is the same that the Conchitoro vote is really important. And in the discussion to use our brands or a common brand, we lose a couple of big wineries because they didn't want to share the brand with any other people. But with the time, they come back, and today we have a very different sizes group, and it's really nice. And I think that in the 2009-10 was a big revolution. And also a little before, I have to talk about PAIS because I'm drinking PAIS. It was another revolution. And I think here maybe are 2 very important people. One is Louis-Antoine Luit, that is a French guy that started to work in the south of Chile, working with natural wines and working with PAIS, PAIS grapes. And Louis-Antoine worked with Marcel in Beaujolais.
Marcel Lapierre.
With Marcel Lapierre in Beaujolais, and finally he bring a lot of techniques and start to revitalize the PAIS. And other people very important for me is Patricio Tapia, because Patricio Tapia is a wine writer, and he was the first one to focus on PAIS and start to push a little bit these new wines. All the wine writers look for some fashion things, and this was a really good because they start to push and to put in front of the people this wine that used to be a pipeño. Pipeño is a common wine that you can buy it in 5 liters bottles, and nobody taking in care because it's a common wine. But finally, this guy start to change some things in the winemaking, start to put it in bottles. The wine is really nice. It's a very with a Beaujolais style, and that was the second revolution. I think today, from the small growers, I think the Pais is the one of the favorite varieties because we have a lot of great old vines with great with great potential, and finally the people start to evolve, looking to the past, and now they are fermenting with no temperature, no yeast, no any addition, with
Nata.
the traditional saranda that they stem the grape by hand. They are using clay vats for the fermentation. And I think that was an incredible revolution, but it was a revolution because they start to do the old style. And
Sorry,
that is
one second. But at the same time, guys like Roberto Enriquez in Bio Bio, a super sharp winemaker. So these are not new guys into winemaking. They are proper winemakers with a lot of knowledge, guys who have worked in big wineries, who now go to their soul and they go down south to make wine like ancestral winemaking, but making natural but super precise and sharp wines.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yes.
I think two words that are really important to associate with this revolution part of the storyline. One is collaboration. I think your notes of all of the different coming togethers that happened between winemakers, with journalists and winemakers, it was really revolutionary in itself because you were supporting a cause that was not just for the brand or the winery. I think that was a big piece of lifting this story up. And then a second piece, I think, is the coming together to tell a story of the identity of Chile that never had a place in the world of wines that the world could really drink and experience. Ironically, these are wines that Chile has drank since the 16th century, but no one had tasted that side of Chile before. So that's a huge piece. And I think with PAIS especially, and all of these different vines, I think the identity piece really comes down to, with those gap years that was between, you know, when Bordeaux varietals dominated, these vines in the South became overlooked by maybe the general public and some certain winemakers, but the family growers that grow these vines were the ones that maintained them and maintained that culture and history. So Julio, we're going to start tasting the País Salvaje from J. Bouchon. When your family arrived to Maule, the land that you bought already had País planted on it. So tell us about what that experience was like for you and your father landing somewhere that had País, and what was your experience with that, and how did that story evolve?
It was a farm that it was full of País, only País, 150 hectares of País and a few hectares, like 5 or 10 hectares, if I'm not wrong, of Carignan. What my father did on that time was he grafted a lot of the vines into the Bordeaux trendy varieties. Mm. So this is what it was happening in the country. It's a normal thing because you cannot survive with País. This is bulk. So what you can do? So you need to be trendy. You need to have the Cabernet, the Merlot, that is the selling wines, no? So my father grafted or pulled out simple all these treasures, you know. So it's really a crazy story. And then the new generation, I love to call it the young generation, myself and my brother. Too bad we are not that young anymore. We came back to the farm. Well, I am there all my life, but in 2013 we started with this, and we start cleaning again a lot of these vines that were abandoned, and cleaning and trying to rediscover some of these vines, and some others grafting back to País. But yeah, it's a sad story somehow. But the beautiful thing is that in the area also, there is a lot of farmers who has beautiful vineyards. We are talking about farming style. So 1 hectare, 2, 3, 5 hectare maximum. It's not the industrial way of planting we usually call in Chile. It's more the local way of
The
planting.
family is a
Yeah,
family.
family farming for local consumption, or maybe they will share or they will sell or the wine locally in the little town. So these guys, you can rescue these, and there is a lot of beautiful vines around the area. So when we say the rescue of these wines, these varieties, it's not the rescue of the liquid. It's not the rescue of the PAIS. It's the rescue of the lifestyle. It's the rescue of the life of these people, because young generations, they are going back to the cities because they cannot survive, selling their grapes to the bulk. So if you pay a fair price, these people can stay and they can survive in the farming. They can start farming again. They can believe in the pruning. They can believe in the horses. They can believe in just living there. So it's the whole lifestyle. It's the food you eat in the place. This is very important. So everything is going back to roots.
And so many people's first experiences of tasting PAIS as a wine really was in the last 5 to 10 years, at least from a US market perspective. So majority of these wines are from the Maule, Itata, Biobío area, from these old vines. But PAIS Salvaje is kind of its own animal. So tell us exactly where PAIS Salvaje comes from and what the name means, and how you created this wine.
Well, salvaje means wild, and if you see this picture in front of you, there is no words. It's very easy. So we have the old bush vines block in the farm, and next to it there is a creek with a native forest around, and we have a theory that 100 or more years ago, the birds, they will eat the seeds, and the seeds will eat they will eat the grapes, sorry, and then they will leave the seeds there, and the seeds will blow into this creek, and then the plants will grow by themselves in this creek, in this forest. Or the other theory is that the old guys, they will prune these bush vines, and they will leave the sticks, or maybe they will throw the sticks, all the rest of the good into the forest, and then we have the material to grow the natural way of a vine. So in all my life, yeah, all my life since I was a little kid, I see these grapes hanging in the trees when I visit my vineyards. But of course, I will never make an idea of making a wine from there, because we need to make the Cabernet Sauvignon. But when we really focus into the PAIS project, this was, well, the first vintage was in 15, but the process started like 10 years before. We decided to make a wine from these vines. Actually, it was my brother together with Felipe Ramirez, the winemaker on that time, that they create this wine. It's not me. I am too old for these crazy things. And yeah, this is the País Salvaje, and if you see the label, we have the guy with the ladders picking, because this is kind of recollection. So we put the ladders on the side of this creek, of this forest, and we pick grapes where we have access. We don't make access, we don't make tunnels into this forest to get more grapes. So it's just, where we just have access. And it's the first time in 2015 we make a natural wine, and we really love it. I remember my father asking me, Julio, do you think we will be able to sell a single bottle of this wine? And,
I remember that too.
and these days, not this wine, because this is very limited, but the País Viejo, that is like this little brother, is the best selling in the US, actually.
Yeah. So for someone who's never tasted PAIS before, describe what this grape tastes like and what they can compare it to and what they should look for when they pick up a bottle of PAIS.
Well, I remember at the beginning, Chile, and our philosophy of winemaking is Bordeaux. So it's all about the big body, it's about the round tannins. And we are afraid, or we used to be afraid, not anymore, but we used to be afraid of the sharp tannins. We used to be afraid of the acidity. We used to be afraid of the tension. I'm talking about 5 years ago. I'm not talking about 20 years ago. And we were afraid of the perception of the consumer, you know? So at the beginning, we used to make carbonic maceration, 50%, just to make the tannins more round and to have a wine that is not super sharp. What is the feedback? The feedback from the consumer is this wine tastes like Beaujolais, the typical easy doing Beaujolais, not the Grand Cru, that they taste like banana, no? Because this is a method of winemaking. The abuse of the carbonic, and you lose the style of your place, the characteristics of your area, of your grapes. So it's more the technique against the sensation of your area. So then we decide to stop this carbonic maceration. But anyway, if you can connect with a variety, for me, Gamay is something that you can connect somehow to make it easy in the world. Also because a lot of the Beaujolais area is granitic soils, where we have the granitic soils in the Secano Interior, in Maule, Tata. So also there is a connection on the soil type. Then we go about temperatures and other things. But if we can connect, yeah, I would say Gamay. So it's a light version, it's a light variety, light color, light body, but the tannins are are rustic. They are edgy. Huh? And for me, this is the beautiful part of this variety, because if you see a wine that is very light and then the sensation in your mouth is going to be light, it's nothing interesting. But this is quite tricky because you see the color, you see the wine, but then in your mouth is a lot of texture. This is the beautiful part. And when the PAIS are more complex, you find layers. It's like in another league, the Pinot Noir. You look some Pinot Noirs that the color is ultra light, but then the texture is something that brings you to another world. So a beautiful PAIS can also bring you to another world. pH is quite high, so it's very sensible to the timing in picking. So you don't want to pick to have a wine, a PAIS wine with 13 plus. So normally the beautiful PAIS will be around 12. Many of them, they don't reach the 12. Most of them in the south, in Biobío, they don't reach because of the lower temperatures and a lot of rain. So they need to pick before, and they have a lot of tension. So it's a variety that is super sensible. Yeah.
I always highly recommend that people chill it a little bit before drinking it.
Yeah.
Chilled PAIS is really, really yummy.
Yeah, and the light versions of PAIS, the easy PAIS, like our PAIS Viejo, I call it like a pool party wine. It's an easy wine and can be drinkable in a terrace in the summertime without the concept to have the best wine from the country. Just easy wine to drink. But the important thing is that you can drink an easy wine, but with a concept, with a story behind, with a real wine. It's not an industrial wine that you drink for summertime. It's a wine that tastes like the wines used to taste 100 years ago, but you can drink it in a swimming pool, you know. But then the most serious wines like this PAIS Salvaje, you can put them in a serious dinner, in a beautiful restaurant, and also it can develop a lot. I have a lot of these wines in my cellar for aging. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I'm not talking about my PAIS. Of course, some bottle of my PAIS, but from other friends. And I believe that these wines, they will age really beautiful. To make a comparison, I say, for example, a lot of people says in Chile, winemakers in Chile, they say that PAIS is never going to be a fine wine. But for me, the question is, what is a fine wine? It's like I compare with a party. If we have a party with lawyers or New Yorkers, you know, the party will be dressed as a black tie. But if you have a party for the gypsies, the way they dress the gypsies is not the way we have in our mind, but maybe the elegant guy of the gypsies is like the PAIS, you know? So what is good for me? What is good for you? What is a elegant wine? What is a complex wine? So this, for me, this is a wine that opens your mind, you know?
Well, it's been amazing for me to be able to have the experience of introducing PAIS to people across all different states in the US. And I think that I've continuously encountered people who are blown away by the story that it invites, you know, the conversation to lead to about PAIS and about Chile. But they are so intrigued by the style. So I encourage everyone to be able to find a bottle of PAIS. Obviously, you can reach out to Vine Connections to find the best way to get you a bottle. It's a really great entrance point to a storyline for Chile, but then a style of wine that I think a lot of people are really reaching for right now. So to transition from this area of Malay and the PAIS story, we're gonna go to another area of Malay for Carignan. So,
but talking about PAIS, that was
oh,
another.
please, if you want to say something about PAIS.
No, because it was another revolution. Because as Julio said, in Chile, the winemaker, we used to do Cabernet Sauvignon. And finally, if you ferment a PAIS, same as a Cabernet Sauvignon with a lot of extraction, looking for color, the result is horrible because the tannin are metallic tannins. No fruit is impossible. For that reason, and with the Pinot Noir was the same. Finally, we start to do in the 2006, 2008, start to change the style. But before of that, again, was a lot of pump over, a lot of extraction, because if you don't have color, it's not a Chilean wine. And finally, was a revolution to start to vinify in a different way, using different tools, because now we can go with oven top tanks, we can use amphors, we can use concrete eggs, and finally that opened the mind of many winemakers for a lot of possibilities. And that is that revolution improved a lot the quality and the quantity of the style that we have now, with the orange wines, with some old techniques to ferment and keep the wine, and even in a cow skin. And that is really, really old. When you don't have any tank to ferment the wine, you can ferment the wine in a cow skin. It's crazy. But finally today, because the PAIS, the winemaker needed to improve the technique, or maybe look behind to the old people, how to ferment and keep the wine. And today we have a lot of different styles and a different aging and or fermenting ways. And that is great, because we are not just thinking in only one way, that is Cabernet Sauvignon.
I think it's a super key point. I think the word formulaic that you used earlier, Julio, in terms of winemaking was a huge shift for Chile, because everything started to align more. You know, taking care of the varietal in the vineyard as it was supposed to, taking care of it in the winery as it was supposed to have a proper expression of the varietal, not just A plus B equals C for every grape in every vineyard. Super important for people to realize that. So for Carignan, Felipe, tell us when you first encountered your vineyard for Vino, and tell us more about why you picked this vineyard for your Vino, because your Carignan, your Vino has a very specific style within the group of vinos. So tell us more about its origin and how you bring it to life in the winery.
It's funny because because when I started to produce Carignan was in 2006, and in those days was revolutionary, because this variety wasn't so famous, high acidity. And finally, 1 year ago in a Vino seminar, I realized that my my Vino is maybe one of the most classic vinos today. And in just 10 years, I passed from the revolutionary to a traditional guy.
Let's go.
That is, that is really funny. But I think Carignan is, I think maybe is the one of the most simple varieties that I work in my portfolio, because in the last 14 years, 10 years, I picked the grapes in the same week, the third week of March.
Wow.
Doesn't matter if it was a rainy year, a hot year, a dry year. The vine was planted in 1958, and it's not any irrigation there. And finally, the vine is so smart that she or it can regulate himself with the quantity of grape of the production to be ripe in a one period of time. And for me, that is maybe the greatest thing of the old vines. The story is funny because I arrived to my grower, that is Jorge Ollé, and I start to talk with the vineyard manager, that is the same guy that planted the vineyard. Is almost now it's not working for a couple of years, but in those days it was 78. It was really old. And finally, I tried to explain how to do the viticulture, how many leaf removal, or how to cut the shots. And finally, I spent a lot of time with this guy during the year, visiting this year and explaining how to do it. And one day before harvest, or a couple of days before harvest, I go there and I say, "Come on, and what do you do? What did you do this year? Did you do all that I say?" And the guy say, "No, I did it in the same way the last 50 years."
So there is no protocol.
No. And finally, I think that is a big lesson about the ego. Because finally, my ego said that, no, I'm agronomist, I will teach this guy how to do it because I study all this. But this guy was much more savvy, much more smarter than me, because this guy worked with the vineyard for 50 years. And every year the grape is really good. And here we are talking about a grape that is we can see in the picture, that is at the end of the harvest, and it's autumn, and we are in the dry farmed area. Is in the middle of a big valley, and is a soil that is a sedimentary soil. 4 meters of soil is maybe the boring soil in the world, because it's the same for 4 meters. You can do a hole in the land for 4 meters and will be the same, but you can find roots and 4 or 5 meters really down. And the quality of the grape is every year almost the same. And I have a lot of sun. It's a hot place. And for that reason, my Carignan will be all the time around 14 alcohol. And I don't have any problem with that. Today is some fashion to go in a low alcohol. And I think it's really healthy. And you can drink more bottles. But finally, I think my vino is expression of the place. And even if I have 14.5 alcohol, the pH of my wine, sorry for the people that it's very technical, the pH is 3.1. That means the potential of the acid in the wine is very high. And I have a lot of acidity also. It's like 7 grams per liter. with a pH 3.1 that is a Sauvignon Blanc level, but the 14.5 or 14 alcohol make the balance on this wine. It's a very deep color, 9 really nice tannins. At the beginnings are really rustic, but for that reason I keep the wine 2+ year in barrels, but neutral barrels, because I want to preserve the fruit. And the expression of the wine, again, for me is an expression of the place. And all the time, it's funny because we are new world, but with really old vines. But I think a good comparison all the time is Priorat. Nobody is asking to Priorat why they have 14.5 or 15 alcohol. And but from New World, from Maule, from Chile, they say, it's too high. No, this is an expression of the place. And that is the most important of all is the wine is in balance. And I think for me, to drink one bottle of Carignan is perfect. And yeah, I'm skipped the part of the story that take me to the Carignan. But finally, in the year 2000, I was drinking Italian wines, French wines, and I said, how this guy do to have to produce really strong wine, powerful, but all the time at the end you feel the freshness. For me, Carignan is the freshness, and is my key. All my wines, or a big portion of my wine, I use Carignan in the blend, and I love it. It's my red variety by far. And
I think if anyone has a treat of trying a wine made from Felipe that has Carignan in it, which is pretty much his red wines, that note exactly of the amount of acidity and freshness that it has, while still being so complex with such depth and amazing aromatics. I really want to note the aromatics of your wines too, Felipe. It's a beautiful entry into the glass. And I really think that people experiencing P.S. Garcia Vino, the amount of times I've had people taste it and look at me and say, this is a Priorat from Chile. And I say, it's Vino from Chile. As in, they all of a sudden have this level of understanding of the high quality and the world-class type of wine that can come from this area of the world that they didn't equate to before. To the point that I was even tasting this with a buyer once, and he was about to go to Spain, and he brought a bottle of P.S. Garcia Vino with him to bring to a Priorat winemaker to taste with him together. And so those sorts of crossing of worlds stories. Hola, Christian and Papa.
Hi, how are you guys? Sorry.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Christian, we're just wrapping up, but I'm so glad you're here. How is your family?
Yeah, they're all right. I was just coming back with my wife. My two little kids, they're still in the hospital, but they're all right. They need a little bit of low sugar, but it's quite common for when they're too little, but they're okay. Thank you very much.
Well, we so appreciate you even taking the time. I think that means that your wines are also your babies equally.
Yeah, for sure. It's not almost the same, but it's something that we make as a team with our heart too.
Yes. Well, we just have a few minutes left, Christian, but I'd love for you to just introduce yourself. And I think you can tell us a little bit about your experience. You were making wines in the north of Chile to arrive to Maule and start making wines there. What has your experience been like, and your shift in winemaking and perspective going to now really working with old vines?
Well, the only bad thing that I bring for the north is the low rainfall, huh?
Right.
But beside that is, I think I know you talk a lot about the history of Chile, but I think even for me, I could say that I'm still a young winemaker, but I start to know the old vines more outside than in Chile, so that make you think what is happening, why in the school you're not learning about the Maule area, you're not learning about how to grow which wine system, how to make PAIS wines that are totally different to Cabernet Sauvignon, or I don't know, Pinot Noir. I think that tells you something. So my approach was really from outside. You know, I tasted a few wines from old vines, but it was my first time in 2016 working with old vines. So it was like, open a new world for me. And from the first minute, I feel something different. Um, it's quite in the north. I used to make like, I think, really good wines because we had a really good terroir. But when I arrived to the south, I started to feel another sensation that it was more than to make a good or great wine. I don't know, that the people will decide. Is you feel kind of the soul of the wines, and I think the south got that. I got that feeling that is more than to make just wine. It's like you are representing a territory. You're working with vines with more than 100 years. They will live more than you, so you got a big responsibility in your shoulders. I think that's more the philosophical part.
Yeah, I, I want to ask Christian, because Christian is, I remember a conversation the first year in Bouchon Winery, and Christian told me, I need to understand the place. I need to see the different areas. For that reason, I vinify different blocks from different growers. And I say, and how many growers did you vinify, Christian?
A little bit more than 30.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yes, yeah. Even I got really great friends in the south, like Felipe. I don't know, Brenan, Cancino, Diego Morales. A lot of people open with knowledge, with wines to understand. I needed to make it myself, you know. So if I make I don't know, a Carignan or a País near, I don't know, 10 kilometers from the ocean, 20, 30, 35, different kind of granite, different decomposition of the granite. I needed to taste it myself. It was a lot, it still is a lot of work. But yeah, first year, 16, I put in my truck 80,000 kilometers. That more than 40 producers. So it was like, I start to question all the things that I used to make in the north in terms of winemaking. I think I pushed the research button and I start to make wine again. And I think in these 4 years that I have almost in North, I learned much more about wine, people, and wine than the 10 years that we've been making wine.
So as we're wrapping up here, I think, you know, this story of the old vines in Chile has been one of the most inspiring for people to really catch their attention. And once they start learning the story, they want to learn even more about the history and they want to taste more. So I want to go around the virtual circle here, and I'd love to hear from each of you what makes you the most excited about Chile today and where you see this old vine story going in the next 10 years. So Julio, let's start with you.
Well, I remember that the best wines from Chile were always the same wines. These Bordeaux blends getting the best ratings, getting the best comments, and everybody's focusing to these Bordeaux blends. Today, we find a lot of attention, and we have actually 2 or 3 of the vinos playing the party of the best wines from the country. And this, not about I'm not talking about the ratings, the 98 points or whatever, 100 points or the gold, super gold medal, but just to be having vinos, Carignanes or Países or Semillones playing the party of the top wines from Chile means a lot. Means personality, means a new Chile in terms of that we are bringing wines that are really local, that are established here. And this for me is the main thing. I'm super happy to see these results after all these years, bringing varieties that are old but new and the people are not looking for, but today this is Chile.
Yeah. Amazing. Felipe, te toca.
Yeah, I think another thing that we didn't talk is about all the potential that you can have if you start to graft some of these old vines with new varieties. And with my partners, it's funny because they have a vineyard, 40 hectares of PAIS. And as Julio said, the age we don't know, but we know that 120 years ago was a document from the sale of this land to another people from the past owners, and that document said that the vines were already planted, and the vines, they have more than 120 years old, and we start to graft it with the Mediterranean varieties, Grenache, Mourvedre, Carignan, and today we are producing from those vines really great wines. I think the potential that we have with these old vines is great. Some people talk about to keep the patrimony, the old vines, and keep it on just on that way. But finally, Julio also said that today the price of 1 kilo of Carignan is $1.3, and 1 kilo of PAIS is 10 cents in some places. And if you start to move in the high quality PAIS, you start to pay more, and the economy of that families start to change. If you graft these old vines with new varieties, also the prices start to grow up, and finally, I think the people can live from the viticulture, can live from the production of grape, and I think that is great. And I think today we have the opportunity to explore and to produce wines in these areas that are the oldest wine area in Chile, but today maybe it's the newest in fashion.
The coolest.
Revitalizing the old to make the new. It's the mantra. Christian, how about you? What makes you the most excited, and where do you see the old vine revolution going in 10 years?
I really agree with Julio and Felipe. Taking the point of Felipe too is like, yeah, there's a lot of people that when we also work in a few with grafting with PAIS, and I think there's a lot of people that maybe is against because it's patrimony, but you need to think that in PAIS there's around 10,000 hectares or 25 acres. And they're small farmers, they got, I don't know, 3-5 acres, and you need to pay the bills every year. So if you move a little bit to Grenache or Mourvedre, I think that helps a lot the economy of the farmers. I think for me, the old vines, thinking in the future, is giving us the answer for I know you talk about, but the erase of the temperature, the global warming, the lack of rain. I think the answer of the viticulture for the south, and also for this change a little bit, is in the old vines. Because of the grafting of PAIS, because of the way you cultivate the bush vine system, I think it's much more better than the double Guyot system or the pergola. And I think these two things I think Julio talked about, but our new planted also in Bouchon is in that system. It's nocturnal selection, master selection for producers. We make our own vines. We are coming back again to use the bush vine system. And I see like the answer for the global warming for us and the lack of rain is how the people has been doing for centuries. I think that is the answer. And I think Chile, the south, and these kind of patrimonial varieties, it will not be something weird. It will be part of the game. Chile is not only PAIS for sure, but it's not only Cabernet too. I think they are living these two worlds together. And I think but the people need to know this. But I think for me, the south is the answer for the future in this part of the viticulture part too.
I think that's a huge point. I think the sustainable, literally sustainable element of the farming there is really important for people to note, and the sustainability of just the culture and maintaining this part of Chile, I think, is incredibly important into the future. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to see all three of your faces. It's been a while. Usually we've seen each other at least a couple times at this point in the year. So it's amazing to be able to connect this way, and I so appreciate your time. I know so many people were really looking forward to this conversation. And as always, your camaraderie and support of each other is phenomenal. So we so appreciate your support. What you see in the screen, I know so many people ask where they can get the wines. These are a lot of our key partners across the US where you can find both PAIS Garcia and Bouchon. But you can also always go to vineconnections.com and reach out to us to find it wherever you are. And Chicos, I want to raise my glass to you. Thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate it.
Just right without wine, but
And for any webinars into the future, go to vineconnections.com/webinars. You might see some of these folks again coming up. So we appreciate it. Ciao, chicos.
Ciao, un placer, un gusto. Thanks to everybody. Bye-bye.
Beso.
Bye-bye.